Brendan O'Neill is here, Chief Political Writer at Spike. Brendan, very good morning to you.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, very well. We've achieved a kind of a peak ridiculousness, I think, now in this country, and I noticed with much interest your comments on the Gregg Wallace story yesterday, which were some of the most sensible I've seen. I've read a piece this morning by Syria Walden, I don't know if you've seen it in the Telegraph, where she talks about the word difficult now has become, you know, the word of sort of the common parlance. You know, I was, you know, I felt uncomfortable. I felt, you know, it was a difficult situation, and nobody really knows now what that means. She says, we used to know what it meant. When somebody said that it was a difficult situation and I was uncomfortable, everybody knew what it meant. Now nobody knows what it means.
Yeah, it's a strange scandal, isn't it? It's not a very substantial scandal, in my view. I think it's been overblown. I think the fact that the BBC News led with Gregg Wallace the other night and put Syria in second place is really a sign of the times.
Yes.
You know, we're apparently supposed to be more concerned that a TV personality allegedly made sexually inappropriate comments to other TV personalities than by the fact that death and destruction have returned to Syria. I think those are skewed moral priorities.
Yeah.
But you know, if he did the things he's accused of, I think most of us will agree that's bad behaviour.
Yeah.
You know, shouldn't go around telling sex stories in the workplace. That's not a very gentlemanly thing to do, in my view. But the point is that, you know, this kind of Me Too feminism that we've had over the past few years, the thing that concerns me about it is that it infantilizes women and it destroys men. So it encourages women to see themselves as the victims of jokes and banter instead of just taking the initiative in the moment to tell the bloke to shut up, which is what we've tended to do in the past. Yeah. And also can destroy men on the basis of accusation alone. It looks like Gregg Wallace's career has gone down the toilet on the basis of these claims. And I think neither of the sexes benefits from this unforgiving culture.
Yeah, and funnily enough, you know, there's all sorts of things swirling around it, because some people are telling me that, you know, it's a bit more serious than just words, it's a bit more serious than just, you know, banter, a bit more serious than him, you know, taking all his clothes off and running naked through the studio, which might have been a bit of a red flag, you would have thought, to the producers of the show. But whether or not that's true, I don't know if it is. Somebody else said to me, "Oh, we're told that the you know, the sort of sex complaints police are already waiting for a case to be filed with them." And I was talking to somebody yesterday at lunch, and we said, you know what? Actually, you wouldn't be surprised if you got reported to the police, because people report things to the police now which are not actually police matters.
That's right. You know, I think what's happening here is that the BBC is overcompensating for its past failures, because the BBC failed grotesquely in relation to Jimmy Savile, who did really bad things, you know, sexual abuse over many, many years. And it failed in relation to Hugh Edwards, and it's very recently failed in relation to Hugh Edwards, who also did very bad things. He possessed really bad child images that are disgusting, and you wouldn't even want to describe them on air. Those two people did bad things, and the BBC either didn't clock it or didn't deal with it very well. I think they're now overcompensating for those failures by going after anyone who is complained about, even if it's for making lewd jokes or saying stupid things or telling sex stories, as Gregg Wallace allegedly did. I think you're right that there might be more to come out. We don't know yet, and if there is, then we will deal with those facts as and when they emerge. But from what we know so far, I think the idea that this Gregg Wallace scandal, the fact that he told Kirsty Walk a dirty story, or he made a joke in front of Kirsty Alsop, I'm really sorry to say this, but the idea that we should be more upset about that than the fact that there's war in Syria, or people are losing their jobs, or that people are turning off the heat in order to save money, I think this is a skewing of our priorities as a nation. And it does seem to me that Gregg Wallace had a little bit of a point when he said that this is because it's middle-class women raising this, and that is why I think it is on the front pages of all the papers.
And of course he's now apologised for that, because he realised that that may have actually pushed people over the edge. Because funnily enough, Julie Hartley-Brewer came in to do a handover with me yesterday, and she said, actually, you know, on Thursday I was defending him, but as soon as he started having to go sort of middle-class women of a certain age, he lost me. And so I think he's realised that that was probably not the right thing to say, albeit that it might be true, because I was listening to Stig Abel talking on Times Radio the other night about Asma Mir, and saying Asma's, you know, told me about this story before. She's been very clear that it didn't, you know, ruin her life, it didn't upset her that much, but she didn't think it should have happened. And so I'm thinking, well, why is she making such a big deal of it then? If that was her attitude at the time, why is she now, you know, throwing the guy under the bus?
You know, I think his comment about middle-class women of a certain age, I think that was an ill-judged comment. My advice to him is to have a period of silence.
Yeah.
Go away, turn off Instagram and stop saying...
Yeah, get off your phone, I think. It's probably good advice for a lot of us in many situations.
Yeah. Get off the phone, switch off, and just wait till everything's been investigated or whatever's happening. Yeah. He certainly shouldn't have mentioned anyone's age. It's not good to mention a woman's age or even a bloke's age, so he shouldn't have brought age into it at all. But the thing is that there is an element here. I think one of the reasons that comment really drove the commentariat crazy and made them really angry is because I think they know there's a little element of truth in it. And what I mean by that is I'm not attacking the women who have made complaints against him. They can do whatever they want. They're free to say whatever they want. But it does seem to me that when middle-class women are the alleged victims of bad behaviour, it makes bigger headlines than when working-class women are. That is unquestionable to me. So we've seen that in recent years where when a Tory MP put his hand on a journalist's knee, that was on Newsnight. That was on the front pages of the papers. Yet when hundreds of white working-class girls were abused for years and years by grooming gangs, no one wanted to talk about it, because who cares about working-class girls? So there is an extraordinary double standard when it comes to which women we listen to and which women make waves in the media.
And I think it's not just women, because the middle-class thing, I think, is a point. Because look at all the people who were ready to defend Hugh Edwards when he was supposedly attacked by a tabloid newspaper shortly before they found out that he was actually an admitted paedophile. They ran to his aid to say that it was horrendous that he was being put through this dreadful tabloid, you know, torture because he was a decent man and a good man, and it would be a terrible shame if this ended his career. Nobody's saying that about Gregg Wallace, who didn't do anything as bad, no matter what is going to come out, as Hugh Edwards did.
Yeah, that, you know, that if you're in the in club, if you're one of the favoured people, as Hugh Edwards was for some time, then you will get a lot more support than someone like Gregg Wallace, who, you know, he left school early, he was a greengrocer, he worked his way up in the world. You know, I'm not defending Gregg Wallace. It sounds to me like he's a bit of an old 1970s creep, allegedly, if the stories are true. So this is not a defence of Gregg Wallace. It's just trying to put this into some kind of context about the reason it's been blown out of proportion and the reason we're all expected to obsess over this pretty small scandal in the scheme of things. You know, and the two-tiered approach in this country is apparent all the time. So, for example, Hugh Edwards got no jail time for possession of really creepy, horrible images, whereas that 53-year-old...
And also a bit of grooming, let's not forget.
Yeah, exactly. And then that 53-year-old woman who wrote something stupid and something she deeply regretted during the riots a couple of months ago, she was sent to jail for 15 months instantly. Yeah. So if you're a bigwig BBC presenter, apparently you get a bit more leniency. If you're a working-class woman who is the sole carer for her disabled husband and you say a stupid, horrible thing on Facebook, you get sent straight to the slammer. There is a two-tiered approach, and we see it all the time in these stories.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about a story that actually is worth talking about, to me anyway. A quarter of offenders from overseas go on to re-offend in the UK after being released from jail and remaining in this country. Foreign criminals who avoid deportation have committed more than 10,000 offences in a year. I mean, this to me is a proper scandal.
This is a huge scandal. Now, this really does deserve to be a lead story on the news at 10. Right. It really is a big scandal, and I think the political class doesn't really realise how angry ordinary people are about facts like this and statistics like this, because nothing better sums up the uselessness and incompetence and just the anti-democratic aloofness of the political class than the migrant crisis, and then the fact that they can't even deport people who've committed crimes or who have been committed offences. That really does speak to a state that is not working, that is not listening to people, because people do want foreign criminals to be deported where that is appropriate. It's not listening to us, it's not doing its job, it's not taking every action it can to keep the country safe. That is the fundamental job of a state, to keep its citizens safe, and it's failing to do that for all sorts of reasons. Incompetence, political correctness, no one wants to be seen to be going after supposedly oppressed migrants. All those political and technocratic reasons mixed together in this issue, I think. And it really is a grim insight into the incapacity of the state these days.
It really is, because some of these people have been committing crimes as serious as murder, knife possession, drug dealing. Others have actually been deported and come back into Britain to commit more crime. I mean, the whole shambles of our kind of deportation and border force scenario is incredible.
It's complete lunacy. And you know, we know what happens when the government has every now and then tried, not this government, but earlier governments have tried to deport people. You get a load of bourgeois activists on the runway screaming, no, don't deport them, stop the planes, and they want to keep them in this country because they're all a bunch of idiots. But, you know, the way I think about it, imagine, Mike, if you or I moved to France, for example, we would fully, and we wanted to become citizens of France or inhabitants of France, we would fully understand that you've got to abide by French law. You've got to try your best to integrate into French society. And if you break French law, you'll be kicked out, you'll be on the next boat back to Britain. Everyone knows that's what happens. Everyone knows that when you are a newcomer to a country, you face the risk of deportation if you undermine that country's security or break its laws. That is a fundamental truth of trying to become a citizen of a new country. We're not doing that. We're basically sending a green signal to criminals from overseas saying, look, if you commit a crime in Britain, you can still stay here. There's a good chance you'll be able to stay in the country, even if you've committed a crime. That's a terrible signal to send.
It is an absolutely awful signal to send. Let me just finish up with Keir Starmer. We've been making fun of him this morning for his ridiculous countdown to putting the Christmas lights on. But we've got another clip from him talking about Russia and once again managing to mangle his words.
Ukraine is on the front line of freedom. And let's be clear, the future of freedom in Europe is being decided today. We face a near and present danger, with Russia as an erratic, increasingly desperate aggressor on our continent.
Increasingly. Why can't he speak properly? He's the Prime Minister of the country, and I don't think that it's wrong to criticise him for it. He can't seem, you know, from substituting sausages for hostages to the number of wooden appearances he makes in all sorts of situations. You know, he's an embarrassment, isn't he?
He is an embarrassment, and I agree with you. It's not wrong to criticise him for this at all. This is the Prime Minister. You know, this is the person who represents Britain on the world stage. We want him to be able to string a sentence together. We want him to speak clearly, and what's more, with a bit more panache, please, a bit more life, a bit more zest. That's not too much to ask. And, you know, that speech more broadly, when he talks about wanting to rehabilitate the relationship between Britain and America, well, you know what? Good luck with that, because we have a Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, who once referred to the incoming American president as a neo-Nazi and a psychopath and a KKK supporter. So relations are going to be strained at a time when we need a strong bond between Britain and America. And then also, look at how Starmer and Lammy are kowtowing to the anti-Israel lobby and going along with the ICC, whereas Trump yesterday issued a brilliant statement on the hostages. He said that if Hamas doesn't release the hostages by the 20th of January, there will be hell to pay for the people who committed this crime against humanity. Our politicians should have said that. On the 8th of October 2023, there's still a British hostage in Gaza. There is still American hostages in Gaza, and yet only Trump is the one speaking up for them. So Starmer, I think, in that foreign policy speech, not only did he fluff his lines, but he's also very unclear about who he's going to work with on the international stage and to what end. They really need to get their foreign policy together.
I totally agree with you, and everything else that they need to get together. But don't worry, they're refreshing the whole government policy and mission as of Thursday, Brendan. So, you know, we can all look forward to that. Thanks very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spike.